The Galactic Council's judgment was swift and absolute. Earth, the cradle of humanity, had been deemed a threat too volatile, too unpredictable to the delicate balance of the galaxy. The decision had been unanimous. Humanity's ambition, its relentless drive to conquer and innovate, was too dangerous to allow. And so, in a single, devastating stroke, Earth was annihilated, reduced to a smoldering wasteland. The Council declared it an act of preservation, a necessary evil to secure the peace of countless worlds. They believed humanity was extinguished, but humanity had always been resilient, defiant, and impossibly stubborn. 50,000 years had passed since Earth's destruction. In that time, the galaxy had moved on, flourishing under the Council's rule. Civilizations rose and fell. Wars were fought and forgotten, and the memory of humanity faded into legend. They became a cautionary tale whispered among the stars, a warning of what happens when ambition goes unchecked. Yet, in the darkest corners of the galaxy, where the Council's influence waned, whispers began to spread. Stories of shadowy figures, fleets of unfamiliar ships, and strange technologies that defied explanation. At first, the Council dismissed them as rumors, the product of overactive imaginations and the natural chaos of the galaxy. But as the sightings grew more frequent, the whispers became harder to ignore. It began on the outer fringes of Council space, where patrol fleets disappeared without a trace. Trade routes, once bustling with activity, became ghostly silent. Planets that had thrived for centuries found themselves cut off, their communications severed, their skies filled with unfamiliar shadows. The Council dispatched its best to investigate, fleets armed with the finest weapons and led by the most skilled tacticians. None returned. In their place came the unmistakable message, broadcast across the galaxy in every language, on every frequency: "We are humanity. We remember." The galaxy reeled. Humanity was supposed to be gone, eradicated to prevent exactly this kind of resurgence. Yet here they were, not just surviving but thriving, their power and reach beyond anything the Council had anticipated. On the bridge of a massive vessel, one of the mysterious human ships, a figure stood staring out at the void. He was clad in dark, angular armor that shimmered faintly in the dim light, a living blend of technology and biology. His gaze was steady, his expression unreadable, but the weight of his presence was palpable. Beside him, an advisor more machine than flesh spoke in a voice tinged with both awe and unease. "The Council underestimated us. They thought destroying Earth would end us. They forgot what we are capable of." The leader nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the stars. "They destroyed our home," he said, his voice calm yet heavy with emotion. "They tried to erase us from existence, but they only made us stronger. We are the children of Earth, and we have returned." On a distant Council world, a gathering of the galaxy's most powerful beings convened in desperation. The room was a cacophony of voices, each more panicked than the last. The destruction of Earth had been the Council's most drastic decision in its history, and now it seemed to have backfired spectacularly. "They can't be allowed to continue," one Council member said, slamming a clawed hand on the table. "We destroyed their planet. How could they have survived?" "Survival is not the issue anymore," another interjected, their voice trembling. "They're not just alive. They're organized, advanced. They've somehow surpassed us." The leader of the Council, An ancient and imposing figure raised a hand to silence the room. "Enough," they said. "We made a mistake, and now we face the consequences. But we will not be cowed. If humanity wants a war, we will give them one." Far above the council world, in the cold expanse of space, a massive fleet emerged from the void. Each ship was a marvel of engineering, sleek and deadly, bristling with weapons that pulsed with an eerie blue light. At their head was the flagship, a behemoth of a vessel that seemed to absorb the starlight around it. Inside, the human leader stood once more, his eyes narrowing as the council world came into view. "Send a message," he said, his voice quiet but filled with determination. "Let them know we're here." Moments later, every screen, every device across the council's territory lit up with a single image. The human fleet, vast and unyielding, stretching as far as the eye could see. And then, the same message that had begun it all: "We are humanity. We remember." The council scrambled to respond, their fleets rushing to intercept the approaching armada. But deep down, they knew they were not prepared for what was coming. As the first ships engaged, the skies above the council world erupted in fire and chaos. The humans fought with a precision and ferocity that left even the most seasoned warriors in awe. Their ships moved like predators, striking with deadly efficiency and disappearing before the enemy could retaliate. And yet, amidst the destruction, one question loomed larger than all others. What was humanity's true purpose? Was it revenge, as their actions seemed to suggest? Or was there something deeper driving them, something the council had yet to understand? As the battle raged on, the leader of the human fleet watched in silence, his expression unreadable. For him, this was more than a war. It was a reckoning, a chance to show the galaxy what humanity had become. And he knew, without a doubt, that this was only the beginning. The flames of battle lit up the void, but the leader of the human fleet barely moved, his gaze fixed on the swirling chaos outside the viewport. Behind him, the command deck hummed with activity. Officers monitored the engagement, their expressions calm and controlled, almost unnervingly so. The humans had waited millennia for this moment, and every move they made felt like it had been planned long before the first council ship was even built. One of the officers turned to the leader, their voice crisp and steady. "Sector 3 has been neutralized. Council forces are pulling back, but they're regrouping near the orbital stations. Their reinforcements will arrive soon." The leader nodded, his face betraying nothing. "Let them. They still think this is a fight they can win." The officer hesitated for a moment, glancing toward the tactical display before speaking again. "Do you think they'll understand why we're here? Why we waited this long?" The leader's gaze didn't shift from the viewport. "It doesn't matter if they understand. What matters is that they remember." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. For 50,000 years, humanity had been silent, hidden in the cracks of the galaxy. While the council celebrated their supposed victory, humanity had rebuilt, not on Earth, but on the scattered remnants of their colonies and in the uncharted voids where the council dared not tread. What the council had destroyed was the birthplace of humanity, but not its spirit. That, as it turned out, was indestructible. The truth was humanity had survived in the harshest of conditions. The destruction of Earth had been a lesson in adaptability, in unity forged through shared loss. At first, they had been scattered, clinging to life in asteroid belts and distant planets with barely enough resources to survive. But over time, their resilience turned to ingenuity. They developed technology far beyond what the Council could imagine, learned to harness the very forces that the Council had dismissed as impossible. And they remembered. Every star chart carried the ghost of Earth. Every piece of technology bore the unspoken promise of retribution. They had sworn not just to survive, but to reclaim their place in the galaxy and to make the Council answer for what they had done. On the Council world below, the panic was palpable. Civilians scrambled to shelters as defense systems engaged the human fleet, their massive guns firing into the void. The Council members themselves were in chaos, their once unshakable confidence eroded with every report of another fleet destroyed, another outpost falling silent. "This can't be possible," one member said, their voice trembling. "Humanity is supposed to be extinct." "Extinct," another snapped, their frustration boiling over. "Does this look like extinction to you?" The ancient leader of the Council sat silently at the head of the chamber, their gaze fixed on the holographic display showing the battle unfolding above. Unlike the others, they didn't appear panicked, but there was a weight to their silence that seemed to quiet the room. When they finally spoke, their voice was cold and deliberate. "We underestimated them. That much is clear. But this isn't the time to dwell on our mistakes. We must act." The others fell silent, waiting for their leader to continue. They waited 50,000 years to return. That means they're patient, calculated. This isn't about destruction. It's about sending a message. We need to figure out what they want. "What they want, revenge," one council member said bitterly. "And they're getting it." But the ancient leader shook their head. "Revenge alone doesn't explain this level of coordination, this precision. No, there's something more at play here." Back on the human flagship, the leader stood alone in a small, dimly lit chamber. A single object sat on a pedestal in the center of the room, a shard of Earth's surface, encased in glass. It was little more than a fragment of scorched rock, but to him it was everything. It was a reminder of what had been lost, of why they had waited so long to strike. He reached out, his gloved hand hovering just above the glass. "We didn't forget you," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "We didn't forget what they took." A chime echoed through the room, and the door slid open. The advisor entered, their mechanical enhancements gleaming faintly in the low light. "The Council is mobilizing their reinforcements. They're calling for an emergency summit to discuss terms." "Terms?" The leader turned, a faint smirk playing at the edges of his lips. "They think they can negotiate?" The advisor tilted their head slightly, the gesture almost curious. "They don't have another choice. We've already crippled 3 of their fleets and taken control of 2 major trade routes. They know they can't win this militarily." The leader's expression darkened. "Good. Then it's time to show them what happens when you try to erase an entire people." As the battle above the Council world raged on, strange reports began to surface. Human ships weren't just attacking. They were disabling key systems, taking control of stations and facilities. They weren't leaving a trail of destruction. They were taking territory, carving out a foothold deep in the heart of Council space. It was a tactic the Council hadn't anticipated, one that spoke to a deeper strategy. On the ground, resistance fighters loyal to the Council were overwhelmed by an unexpected sight. Humans, moving with precision and purpose, outfitted with technology that seemed almost alive. They didn't kill indiscriminately. They fought only when provoked, subduing rather than slaughtering. It wasn't the scorched earth revenge the council had feared. It was something worse. "They're rebuilding," one council general said in horror as they watched the reports come in. "They're not here to destroy us. They're here to replace us." Above, the human leader received another report from the fleet. The battle was nearing its climax, the council forces finally beginning to break. He nodded, satisfied but not surprised. They had planned for this moment for millennia, every variable accounted for. As the final stages of the battle played out, he turned to his advisor. "Send a message to the council. Tell them we're willing to talk." The advisor raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "Talk? After all this?" The leader's expression was unreadable. "It's not a surrender. It's an ultimatum. They need to understand what's at stake." The advisor nodded, turning to relay the order. As the message was sent, the leader stood once more at the viewport, staring out at the battle. For all their power, for all their precision, there was a weight to this war that he couldn't ignore. He wasn't just fighting for revenge. He was fighting to ensure that humanity would never again be at the mercy of forces that sought to erase them. And he knew, deep in his soul, that this was only the beginning. The council chambers were silent as the message played on every screen. The voice was calm, measured, and precise, but beneath its composure was a warning, sharp as a blade. It was the leader of the human fleet, his words echoing across the room like a thunderclap. "You thought we were gone. You thought the destruction of Earth would be the end of us. You were wrong. Humanity is not a species you can erase with fire and steel. We have returned, stronger than you ever imagined. And now, the galaxy will know what it means to defy us." The message cut out, leaving only the stunned silence of the council members. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of the situation pressed down on them like a physical force, the realization sinking in. This wasn't just a retaliation. This was a reckoning. On the flagship, the leader stood at the center of the command deck, watching as the fleet advanced. The council's reinforcements had arrived, a massive armada bristling with weapons and shields, but the humans didn't falter. Every ship moved with precision, their formation tightening as they prepared for the inevitable clash. The advisor stepped forward, their mechanical enhancements glowing faintly in the dim light. "The council fleet is moving into position. They've deployed their planetary defense grid." The leader nodded, his expression calm but focused. "They're predictable. They think their size and firepower will intimidate us. They still don't understand what we've become." Outside, the battle began in earnest. The council's ships opened fire, their weapons lighting up the void with streaks of energy. The human fleet responded in kind, their attacks precise and devastating. Where the council relied on brute force, the humans relied on strategy, targeting weak points and exploiting gaps in the enemy's defenses. On the ground, the situation was equally dire. Human forces had landed in key locations, their technology overwhelming the council's planetary defenses. Civilians watched in awe and terror as the invaders moved with an almost supernatural efficiency, disabling infrastructure and taking control of vital systems. But it wasn't chaos. There was no indiscriminate destruction, no mindless violence. The humans were methodical, almost surgical in their actions. In one of the captured council buildings, a young officer stood frozen as a group of humans entered. Their leader, clad in sleek black armor, looked at the officer with a gaze that was both cold and calculating. The officer raised their weapon, hands trembling, but the human didn't flinch. "We're not here to kill you," the humans said, their voice low but commanding. "We're here to take back what you stole from us." The officer hesitated, the words sinking in. Before they could respond, the humans moved past, their focus already on the next objective. It wasn't what the officer had expected. These weren't the monsters the council had described. They were something else, entirely something far more dangerous. Back in orbit, the flagship shook as a volley of energy blasts struck its shields. Alarms blared, but the crew remained calm, their movements precise and practiced. The leader watched the tactical display, his mind racing as he calculated their next move. "The council is throwing everything they have at us," the advisor said, their voice steady despite the chaos. "They're desperate. Desperate people make mistakes," the leader replied, his tone unyielding. "And we'll use that to our advantage." As he spoke, a new alert appeared on the display. One of the council's ships, a massive dreadnought, had broken through the human formation and was heading straight for the flagship. Its weapons were charged, its intent clear, to take out the command ship and end the battle in one decisive strike. The crew reacted instantly, their training kicking in as they worked to counter the threat. But the leader raised a hand, signaling them to pause. "Hold fire," he said, his voice calm despite the imminent danger. "Let them come." The advisor looked at him, their expression unreadable. "Are you sure about this?" "They think they found our weakness," the leader said, a faint smile playing at the edges of his lips. "Let's show them how wrong they are." As the dreadnought closed in, the flagship remained still, its weapons offline. The council ship's captain watched in confusion, unsure of what to make of the apparent surrender. But as they prepared to fire, the human flagship's hull shifted, revealing a hidden array of weapons that pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Before the council ship could react, the flagship fired. The energy beam cut through the dreadnought's shields like they were paper, disabling its engines and weapons in a single devastating strike. The massive ship drifted, powerless, as the flagship moved past, its course unbroken. On the council world below, the ancient leader watched the battle unfold from the safety of a fortified bunker. For the first time in their long life, they felt something they hadn't experienced in centuries: fear. The humans weren't just winning, they were dominating, their every move a calculated step toward total control. "This can't be happening," one of their advisors said, their voice shaking. "They shouldn't be this powerful." The ancient leader didn't respond. They knew the truth, even if they didn't want to admit it. The council had made a critical error all those years ago. They had underestimated humanity, believing that their destruction of Earth would end the threat. But instead, it had created something far more dangerous: a unified, determined force with nothing left to lose. As the battle raged on, the tension reached a breaking point. The human fleet pushed deeper into council space, their forces unstoppable. On the ground, the humans continued to seize control, their actions deliberate and coordinated. And all the while, the question lingered: what was their endgame? In the flagship's command deck, the leader stood silently, watching as the council's forces began to crumble. The moment of victory was within reach, but his expression remained unreadable. This wasn't just a battle. It was the culmination of 50,000 years of planning, of waiting, of remembering. And he knew, as the final pieces fell into place, that the real battle was yet to come. As the remnants of the council fleet faltered, the battle seemed all but decided. Yet the human leader didn't allow himself even a flicker of relief. Something was off. The speed at which the Council forces had crumbled felt too easy, too rehearsed, as if they were playing into a strategy not their own. He leaned forward, staring at the tactical display, and his instincts sharpened into a single, uneasy thought. This wasn't surrender. It was a distraction. The advisor approached cautiously, their movements betraying the same unease. The Council fleet is withdrawing. We're registering minimal resistance across all sectors. Should we press the advantage? Not yet, the leader replied, his voice low but firm. There's more to this. They fought harder for less in the past. Why give up now? The advisor hesitated, scanning the displays for any signs of a trap. Perhaps they've realized they can't win. Their forces are in shambles. The leader shook his head. They've never been the type to admit defeat, not like this. If they're falling back, it's because they're planning something. As if on cue, a new alert flashed across the command deck. One of the human fleet's recon vessels, stationed far from the main battle, had gone dark. No distress signal, no signs of enemy engagement, just silence. Moments later, another ship disappeared, this time closer to the core of the formation. The pattern was clear, and it was spreading. Report, the leader barked, his calm demeanor giving way to urgency. A communications officer quickly accessed the data streams. We're losing ships to an unknown interference. No visible attacks, no identifiable signatures. It's like they're being erased. The leader's fists clenched at his sides. The Council had been hiding something, a trump card they hadn't revealed until now. It wasn't brute force or numbers. It was something far worse, something designed to bypass the human's superior tactics and technology entirely. Trace the pattern, he ordered. Find the source. As the crew scrambled to comply, the advisor stepped closer, their voice hushed but insistent. If they've developed a weapon capable of nullifying our forces, it could change everything. We need to pull back and regroup. The leader shook his head. If we retreat now, we'll lose the momentum we've spent 50,000 years building. We need to understand what we're dealing with. Meanwhile, on the Council world, the ancient leader sat in their command center, a faint smile playing across their lips. The initial phase of their plan had gone exactly as intended. They had allowed the humans to believe they were winning, to think they had the upper hand. But now the real battle would begin. The disruption field is active, one of their advisors reported, their voice tinged with a mix of fear and awe. Human ships are being neutralized, as predicted. Good, the ancient leader replied, their tone cold and calculating. Let them see that for all their strength, they are not untouchable. Let them taste the fear they've sown. The disruption field was a relic of an era long before the Council's dominance, a weapon so dangerous and unpredictable that it had been buried in the deepest archives of their history. But desperate times called for desperate measures, and the ancient leader had unearthed it, knowing full well the risks it posed. It didn't simply disable ships or destroy systems, it erased them from existence, leaving no trace behind. On the human flagship, the leader stared at the tactical display, watching as more ships vanished into the void. The pattern was clear now, a growing sphere of interference spreading outward from a single point in the Council's territory. It wasn't random, it was deliberate, and it was closing in. We've isolated the source, the communications officer announced. It's coming from a facility deep within the planet's surface. Whatever it is, it's heavily shielded. The leader nodded, his mind racing. Prepare a strike team. If we can't neutralize it from orbit, we'll have to take it out on the ground. The advisor hesitated. "You're not seriously considering a ground assault. That facility will be crawling with defenses. It's our only option," the leader said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "If we don't stop this now, they'll wipe us out one ship at a time." As the flagship launched a series of dropships toward the planet, the tension on the ground escalated. The humans had already secured several key locations, but the disruption field was wreaking havoc on their operations. Communication lines faltered, equipment failed, and soldiers reported strange anomalies that defied explanation. The strike team, led by the leader himself, landed on the surface under heavy fire. The Council forces guarding the facility fought with a desperation that matched the humans' own. Knowing that the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, the battle was brutal, every inch of ground contested with a ferocity born of survival. As the humans pushed closer to the facility, they encountered something unexpected: remnants of Earth. Old relics, fragments of architecture, even artifacts from humanity's long-lost history, all preserved within the facility's walls. It was as if the Council had kept them as trophies, a cruel reminder of their victory over Earth. The sight only fueled the leader's resolve. This wasn't just about survival or revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming what had been stolen, about proving that humanity could endure even the most unimaginable losses. Inside the facility, the disruption field's core pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly light. It was a massive, ancient machine, its design unlike anything the humans or even the Council had ever encountered. The leader stared at it, a mix of awe and dread washing over him. This was the weapon that had the power to unmake everything they had built. But as he approached, a chilling realization struck him. The machine wasn't of Council origin. Its design, its energy signatures, none of it matched their technology. This wasn't a weapon the Council had created. It was something they had found, something far older and far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The leader's voice was steady, but there was an edge of urgency. "We need to shut this down, now. Whatever this is, it's not just a threat to us. It's a threat to everything." The team worked quickly, but the machine resisted their every attempt to disable it. Its energy output surged, spreading the disruption field even further. Time was running out, and the stakes had never been higher. The machine pulsed with a violent, blinding light, sending shockwaves through the facility. The leader shielded his eyes as the team worked frantically around him, their tools and devices no match for the ancient technology. The disruption field continued to expand, swallowing more ships and cutting off communication with the fleet. Each second felt like an eternity, the weight of their failure looming ever larger. "It's not responding," one of the engineers shouted, their voice panicked. "Every attempt to shut it down is being overridden. It's like it's alive." The leader's mind raced. If brute force wasn't an option, there had to be another way. He glanced at the machine, studying its intricate design, the strange symbols etched into its surface. It wasn't just advanced. It was alien, completely foreign to anything humanity or the Council had ever encountered. Yet, deep in its structure, something felt familiar, as though it resonated with a part of him he didn't understand. Before he could process the thought, the facility shuddered violently, and the machine's energy spiked. The field was destabilizing, its reach expanding erratically. The leader stumbled but caught himself, his resolve hardening. If they couldn't disable it, they would have to destroy it, even if it meant risking their lives in the process. "Prepare the charges," he ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. If we can't stop it, we'll take it out the old-fashioned way. The team hesitated for a moment but complied, planting high-yield explosives around the machine's core. The leader stepped closer, his eyes locked on the pulsing energy. As he approached, the symbols on the machine began to shift, rearranging themselves into patterns that felt hauntingly familiar. A sudden realization hit him like a thunderclap. "It's a signal," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "This isn't just a weapon. It's a beacon." The others froze, their confusion palpable. "A beacon?" one of them asked. "For what?" The leader's heart pounded in his chest. The symbols weren't random. They were forming a sequence. A message written in a language so ancient it defied understanding yet felt eerily recognizable. He reached out, his hand hovering just above the machine's surface, and the energy seemed to react, calming slightly, as if acknowledging his presence. Before he could decipher the meaning, the machine surged again, its light dimming and then flaring brighter than ever. The team braced themselves, expecting the worst, but instead the machine emitted a low, resonant hum. The disruption field began to contract, drawing its energy inward, as though the machine were preparing for something far more catastrophic. The leader's instincts screamed at him, "Detonate the charges. Now." But before anyone could act, the facility's walls began to crumble and the ceiling split apart, revealing the night sky. From above, a massive, glowing structure descended, unlike any ship or station they had ever seen. It was sleek and seamless, its surface shimmering with colors that defied logic, as though it existed partially outside the boundaries of reality itself. The leader stared in awe and horror as the machine's energy connected with the descending structure, forming a bridge of light. The realization struck him like a physical blow. This wasn't just a council weapon or a relic of the past. It was a summoning device, calling something ancient and unknowable to their galaxy. The structure pulsed, sending out waves of energy that rippled across the planet and beyond. The leader turned to his team, his voice filled with urgency. "We have to leave. Now." But the charges, one of them started. "It's too late," he interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Whatever this is, we can't stop it here." The team retreated, sprinting toward their extraction point as the facility collapsed around them. The leader was the last to leave, his gaze lingering on the machine and the alien structure above. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a doorway, and something was stepping through. As their dropship ascended, the full scope of the situation came into view. The alien structure was massive, dwarfing even the largest council ships. Its energy spread across the sky, engulfing the planet in a shimmering field that seemed to defy time and space. Council forces and human ships alike ceased their fighting, their weapons falling silent as they stared at the incomprehensible entity. On the flagship, the advisor's voice was filled with dread. "What are we looking at?" The leader's expression was grim. "Something older than the council. Older than us. They didn't create that machine, they found it. And now we're all paying the price." The alien structure pulsed again, and a voice, deep and resonant, echoed across every communication channel, speaking in a language no one recognized yet somehow understood. "We have heard your call. You have awakened us." The leader clenched his fists, his mind racing. Humanity's quest for revenge had unwittingly unleashed a force beyond their comprehension. The Council's arrogance had led them to meddle with powers they couldn't control, and now the entire galaxy was at risk. But even in the face of this overwhelming threat, The leader's resolve didn't falter. Humanity had survived the destruction of Earth. They had endured 50,000 years of exile. If they could face that, they could face anything, even this. Turning to his crew, he spoke with a quiet determination. This isn't over. Whatever they are, whoever they are, will find a way to stop them. Humanity doesn't bow. Not to the Council, and not to this. The alien entity's energy surged, and the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. The leader watched as the shimmering field expanded, engulfing everything in its path, and he knew the fight was far from finished. The real battle was just beginning. Creating a compelling 10,000-word resolution for a story of this scale requires significant planning and development, including weaving together subplots, delivering an impactful conclusion, and addressing the themes. Here's a continuation that naturally brings the narrative to its conclusion. The alien entity loomed, its shimmering form blotting out the stars. On the human flagship, the crew watched in silent awe and terror, their battle-hardened faces betraying the weight of the moment. The leader stood at the center of the command deck, his gaze fixed on the tactical displays. The entity's presence was rewriting everything they thought they understood about the galaxy and themselves. The voice returned, resonating through every communication channel. You have awakened us after eons of slumber. We see your conflict, your desperation, and we judge. A shiver ran through the room as the leader clenched the edge of the console. He felt the weight of those words and the unknowable power behind them. But he didn't let fear overtake him. Humanity had come too far to falter now. What does that mean? A crew member whispered, breaking the silence. It means we don't have time for hesitation, the leader said firmly. Open a channel to all ships, human and council alike. The communications officer hesitated, then complied. Across the fleet, both human and council vessels heard his voice as he addressed them with steady resolve. This is no longer a war between us. What you're seeing out there is bigger than anything we've faced. We have one chance to survive this, and it's going to take all of us working together. The Council forces, still reeling from the appearance of the alien entity, hesitated to respond. On their flagship, the ancient leader listened to the broadcast, their expression unreadable. They had spent their existence ruling through fear, their authority cemented by humanity's downfall. Yet now, in the face of a greater power, their control felt hollow. They opened a channel of their own, their voice heavy with reluctance. Humans, they began, the word laced with decades of contempt. If you believe we will stand by your side, you misunderstand us. But we cannot ignore what this entity represents. We will not kneel to it, just as we will not kneel to you. The leader heard the words and nodded grimly. It wasn't an alliance, but it was enough. Together, the human and council fleets began coordinating, focusing their attention on understanding the entity and its intentions. Scientists and tacticians from both sides shared data for the first time, driven by necessity. The entity's energy field expanded further, enveloping entire planets. Within the field, time and space distorted, creating phenomena no one could explain. Council colonies disappeared, and human ships lost contact, only to reappear hours later with no memory of what had occurred. The galaxy was unraveling, and the entity showed no signs of stopping. As the leader worked with the council to plan their next move, a signal from the surface of the planet caught his attention. It was weak but insistent, originating from the ruins of the facility where the disruption field had been activated. The leader made it a quick decision. "I'm going back," he announced. The advisor looked at him in disbelief. "That's madness. The surface is unstable. You barely made it out alive the first time. If there's even a chance we can find something down there to stop this, we have to take it," the leader replied. "Get the dropship ready." Accompanied by a small team, he descended once more to the planet's surface. The devastation was worse than before. The facility was collapsing into itself, and the alien structure above pulsed with energy that distorted the air around it. Yet, amidst the chaos, the signal grew stronger, guiding them deeper into the ruins. They reached the core of the facility, where the machine still stood, its energy diminished but not extinguished. The leader approached cautiously, his earlier sense of familiarity returning. As he touched the surface, a sudden flash of light engulfed him, and his mind was flooded with visions. He saw a galaxy long before humanity or the Council existed, a time when the entity's creators ruled as gods. They had built the machine as a safeguard, a way to summon their kind if their empire ever fell. But their hubris had doomed them, and they were consumed by their own creations. The machine had remained dormant for millennia until the Council unearthed it, unknowingly awakening the entity and setting this chain of events in motion. The vision faded, and the leader staggered back, his breath coming in short gasps. He now understood the stakes. The entity wasn't here to destroy them out of malice. It was fulfilling its purpose, reasserting the dominance of its creators. But it didn't have to end this way. "We can stop this," he said aloud, his voice filled with newfound determination. Back on the ship, the leader worked with his team to develop a plan. The machine's energy signatures held the key. If they could reverse the signal, they might be able to send the entity back to wherever it had come from. It was a long shot, but it was their only hope. As the fleets prepared for the final confrontation, "We didn't come this far to be erased. Humanity has always found a way to survive, no matter the odds. This is our moment to prove that we're more than the sum of our mistakes. Let's finish this." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human and Council ships fought side by side, not against the entity, but against the chaos it had unleashed. They bought time for the leader's team to activate the modified signal. The alien structure retaliated, its energy tearing through ships with ease, but the combined forces held their ground. Finally, the signal was ready. The leader gave the order, and the modified signal was sent out. The alien structure reacted immediately, its energy destabilizing. The entity's form began to fracture, its shimmering light dimming as the signal pulled it back to the void from which it had come. But as the entity faded, a final pulse of energy rippled across the galaxy, a parting gift from an ancient power. The leader felt its impact and knew it would leave lasting scars. Yet, the entity was gone, and the galaxy was safe for now. In the aftermath, the Council and humanity faced an uncertain future. The battle had changed them both, forcing them to confront their shared vulnerability. The leader stood on the bridge of his flagship, gazing out at the stars. "This isn't the end," he said quietly. "It's just the beginning." And so, the galaxy moved forward, its inhabitants forever shaped by the events that had unfolded. Humanity had reclaimed its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as survivors, resilient, determined, and unbreakable. The Council, humbled by the encounter, began to reconsider its place in the universe. And somewhere, in the depths of space, the echoes of the entity's departure lingered, a reminder that even the greatest powers could be undone by their own creation.